Welcome back to the show. We are up to the R in the second section of the book, Transform, which stands for Realisations. So this chapter brings together a load of foundational points that I learned along the way, things that are really powerful and can seem quite short by themselves, but carry so much weight along this thing, that they're the type of thing that I repeat over and over again. Actually, at one point when I was living in a city centre apartment by myself, if you'd have walked into my apartment, you'd have thought I was an absolute lunatic, because I had sticky post-it notes, different bright colours all over the apartment, stuck on the fridge, stuck on the kitchen cupboard, stuck on the bathroom mirrors, stuck on the wardrobes in the bedroom, stuck on the TV, stuck on my laptop, full of these messages to remind myself, because something we'll go over and over is that, going back to the first section, the heal section, what we've actually become in our life is a human that was built by other people. We have had decades of programming to be the way we are. And that's why it's, I think, naive to think a lot of the time we can completely transform overnight. Don't get me wrong. Transformations can and do happen in certain circumstances. For the most part, as far as I'm concerned, if you want to make long-term changes to your life, you need to make changes to your behavior. And that is to the programming that we're putting in. So we want to take away the programming we used to have to be the person we were built to be, and we want to install new programming like a laptop, but it needs to be done over time. And that was one of the ways I did it. Subconscious messages all around my apartment. If you live alone, or if you live with people who are very reasonable and don't mind you doing things like this, these are little tips that are really good to do to start your subconscious just understanding little lessons, little new ways of doing things, new programming that you can take forward. I still repeat loads of these things, both in coaching calls and to myself in my own life. We're going to run through a few of them. We can dive in and out of them as we go on through future episodes. These are the type of things you will hear me repeat often, and we will come back to a lot. So think of them as the foundation points that we build on for the rest of the stuff going forward. The first one, which is something I love and is actually really empowering, is same life, different houses. And it's something I realized a few years ago, actually, before I'd even started doing this work, is that I've been in a very privileged position for a long time now as a lawyer. And even before then, for whatever reason, people have often shared their deepest, darkest secrets with me. But as a lawyer and now as a coach, I get to see behind the curtains into people's lives, into things that they might not tell other people. And one of the problems I see that we face in life is that everybody thinks their problems are just their problems and they're alone. And you think that your problems are just yours and you're alone. And I think mine are just mine and I'm alone. And the privileged position I've been in is that I get to see that everybody is basically experiencing the same problems as each other. We are all effectively living the same lives, just in different houses. And what I've found over time is that just telling people that their problems are not just their problems are shared by millions, probably billions of people all around the world, makes us feel better. Because if there's nothing else, it means you're not alone. You are not alone because you share the same problems as all of the other humans that you ever come across. You might not know that. They might not tell you. They might be presenting to the outside world this perfect life in the same way that you are. But we're all doing the same thing. So behind the scenes, which is what I get to see, we're all living the same life in different houses. It's worth remembering that as we go through all of this stuff. You are not alone. Another one of my favorite ones, I'll say this phrase lots as I go through things: simple, not easy. In the English language, we tend to use the words simple and easy interchangeably as if they're the same thing, but they're not. My favorite example of this, I've heard this in the personal development world loads. I don't know where it originated, so I can't give them credit. Sorry. But basically, if simple and easy were the same thing, think about making money and losing weight. Making money, the principles of making money and the principles of losing weight are really, really simple. They're really simple. If you go back through decades, probably centuries, and look at how to lose weight and how to make money, the principles are all the same. It's really simple. The problem is the process isn't easy, because if it was easy, we would all be billionaires with six packs. That's the line from the personal development world that I've heard before. And it's true. It's not easy. It's not easy to get a six pack. It's not easy to become a billionaire. It's not easy to become rich, but it is simple. And this is really important. This work, all of the stuff we do, loads of the stuff I talk about, I hope the way I talk about it, it's really simple. The problem is it's not easy. It takes practice. You will hear me make the analogy again, another foundational point, with going to the gym, personal training, getting fit, getting that six pack. If you want to get emotionally and psychologically fit and healthy, it's simple, but it's not easy. So we need to do the work. We need to practice. We need to commit to it. We need to understand that this is something we'll just do for the rest of our lives now, which takes us on to something else, which I love, which is a line that until I embraced this on my own adventure, I was always a little bit uncomfortable. I was always a little bit anxious. I always wanted to know, when will this end? Like, how much more do I have to do? And one of my coaches in New York, Ralph, who I love to bits, said to me once, the thing about this work is you are always a student. Always a student. You will never master it. It is impossible to master it. And that means that there are no expectations on yourself. So the problem that people like me and maybe you in my old life have always had is we're trying to master things all the time. And the thing with that is, once you think you're a master of something, you then judge yourself because your performance isn't good enough. You need to attain a certain level. If you accept, and if I accept, that we are always students when it comes to this stuff, we can be kinder to ourselves. Going back to the last episode, we can say, yeah, what do students do? Students learn. So we can do our best all the time. And at the same time, we can accept, but we'll never master it. One of my favorite lines in this, and I don't know how true these stories are, but I've heard them and I like them. They do no harm to repeat, is that if you ask Eric Clapton what he does for a living, he says, I'm learning how to play the guitar, which I love. The idea that if you start learning to play the guitar, you don't get to a point where someone says, that's it, you're finished. There's a similar one, which is attributed to Noel Gallagher from Oasis, who said, gave a guitar to his daughter and said, this isn't a computer game. You can't complete it. It's the same with this. Think of personal training. You don't go to the gym and then at some point someone says to you, right, you've completed personal training. You never have to come to the gym again. It's the same with this work. We need to just accept that we are always students and we will continually be learning throughout our lives. Another one, something to avoid this time. And you might have already started finding yourself doing this as we go through this work. What I often find people do as I go through this, as I start talking about stuff, is we find it very, very easy, especially when I'm talking about the darker sides of this stuff and this work, find it very easy to identify in other people. I'll often see people point at someone else and say, yeah, that's you, especially in romantic relationships, husbands and wives, boyfriends and girlfriends, girlfriends and girlfriends, boyfriends and boyfriends, love pointing at each other, love saying, that's you, that is. And when we bring it to us and when we say, isn't that you as well? I often do this. It's one of the things I have fun with in my own life now. Don't you do that? People will often say, no. And they say a line, and this is something I like to talk about is red flags. So I have lots of things in my life that are red flags to watch out for. This is a line to watch out for, is a red flag. The line, that's different. That's different. We like to say that when we look at one person doing something that we're judging as being bad, and then someone brings it to us and says, but don't you do the same thing? And you say, no. What I do is different. We do it all the time. We make things, we give them different names. You'll hear me talk about this loads as we come up to the chapter about the stories we tell ourselves. A big one in this, to give you a little glimpse into the future, is about manipulation. So none of us like to think of ourselves as manipulative. So we'll look at somebody else and we'll think of them and we'll say they're manipulative. But when it comes to ourselves, we might say things like, I can wrap them around my little finger. I can charm the birds out the trees. I'm charismatic. I'm persuasive. All of these things are different words for manipulative. There's lots of context to that, and it depends what your intentions are in this world. But when we look at these things and go, hang on, do I do that as well? When we start saying, no, that's different, it's really important to come back again. And you'll see now how, do you remember in a previous episode, we talked about Karate Kid training, how we'll learn different things in different places and then you bring all the strands together. This is where the strands start coming together, because what we need to do is take responsibility and go, is it different? Is it different, or is my behavior the same as the behavior I'm criticizing? I'm just giving it a different name. It's a really important one. One of my favorite ones, one of my catchphrases should be, this is one of my favorite ones. This comes from my favorite book of all time, Letting Go by David Hawkins. I would highly recommend you read it or listen to it if you haven't. I must have listened to it 7 or 8 times in the past few years. And this one always stuck out to me. It's really important. And in the world in which we live, it's huge. And this is the idea that when we form an opinion about something, instead of referring to it as my opinion, we call it an opinion, or we call it an opinion I currently hold. Because the problem we've got at the moment is when we call something my opinion, we form an attachment to it. We form an emotional attachment to it. Now, going back to the stuff we've already discussed, when we have low self-worth, when we feel like we're not good enough, if we then attach we have an emotional attachment to an opinion, it makes it hard for us to change our mind about anything. Because what we then do is we attach that opinion to our own self-worth. And by doing that, if someone attacks that opinion, if someone questions or challenges that opinion, it's like they're challenging our self-worth, our own level of, are we good enough? So just by gently letting go of that, something you'll hear me talk about is holding things loosely, is just by gently letting go of that and saying, okay, it's not my opinion. It's just an opinion. Most of the time, think about it. It's not my opinion anyway. It's not something we created. It's something we've attached to. We've heard someone else say it and we've said, yeah, I like that. So from now on, if we just gently say, that's an opinion I currently hold, what it means is it doesn't attach to us. So from now on, when someone challenges it, we can be more open to changing our mind. That can be a little step on the way to building our self-worth. The people I know who've got healthy self-worth, who are good enough, have no problem changing their mind about things because it doesn't affect them. It doesn't affect their own self-worth. They can say, yeah, actually, I've changed my mind about that. That's, yeah, you've made a point. I've changed what the opinion I currently hold is. It's a really big one. Another big one, which in day-to-day life, this is a language point. So again, something to look out for, red flags, and a language point to tweak your own language, the way we talk every day. We often in English language use the word but. We'll throw it around willy-nilly, and we will say lines at home, again, in romantic relationships with family members especially, where we might say, for example, I love you, but the way you stack the dishwasher drives me insane. And the problem we've got with that is when we say the word but, it's like everything that was said before the word but gets discarded. It's like these two things can't exist at the same time. We've talked about black and white thinking, ties into the same stuff. So as soon as we use the word but in the middle, these two things now don't exist together. So what the person hears is not the I love you bit. They just hear the way you stack the dishwasher annoys me. And a very simple change in our language is to put and instead of but. So as we go through life, I still do this now. I catch myself. I've trained myself over the years. Whenever I say the word but, I think to myself, should that be an and? Because then we can start saying, I love you and the way you stack the dishwasher annoys me. And all of a sudden, these two things exist together. That not only helps us, it helps the person we're speaking to. It stops life being so black and white. It allows there to be room for both. Something my therapist always said to me is the room for both. The more we can get away from black and white thinking and go into scaled thinking that we'll talk about a lot, this helps us do that. It helps us say, actually, do these things exist together? Can they exist together? One of the big moments I had in this was when I was in Bali a few years ago. And I remember when we'd been there for a month, bonded with loads of people, and a load of people were leaving. A load of us were staying, but there was about 20 of us and 10 were leaving. And the day they were leaving, someone said to me, how do you feel? I said, I'm happy, sad. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, I'm really sad that these people who I've bonded with and have spent a month with are leaving, and I'm really happy that I got to meet them. And it was the first time in my life I realized these two things could exist at the same time. It's really, really important. So just switching those words and for but whenever we're thinking about things, whenever we're talking, can these two things exist together? Is there room for both? And one more while we're here. There's a few more in the book. There's plenty more in the book to get stuck into if you want to read them. But it's the idea of success and redefining success. This is a pretty big, wider one. One of the problems I see in life is the way we've built societies to think about what success is. So ultimately, I think most people, when they refer to success, they mean money, they mean materialistic possessions. But I very rarely hear people talk about peace or contentment or joy or happiness even. I'm not a big fan of talking about happiness, because I often say, even at my most depressed, there were times when I was happy, whereas I was never content, I was never peaceful. And now for me, when I think about success, I think about, well, is a person contented? Are they peaceful? Are they fulfilled? Are they living a life that is true to them? Do they want to live this life? I remember hearing someone, a guy, Derek Sivers, again, through a Tim Ferriss podcast, and he got asked once, like, about someone being successful. And he said, well, the reality is you don't know whether someone was successful because you don't know what they were aiming to do. Like, if Richard Branson was actually setting out to live a very quiet life by himself and not make any money or make any headlines, he's been very unsuccessful. So it's even important how we define these things for in the general world, in the world in which we already live. And the step further from that, I nearly said, but the step further from that, did you catch that? And the step further from that is, can we redefine it all together? Are we all really happy on this path? Are we content on this path? Are we fulfilled on this path of just chasing materialistic possessions and money? I know I wasn't. I know when I changed my life, everything completely transformed for me. That doesn't mean I don't want money, and it doesn't mean I don't want materialistic possessions. I still do. The difference now is I don't need them. I define success in a different way. I'm not chasing these things to try and make myself happy or to succeed in the eyes of myself or other people. That doesn't mean it's necessarily true for you or for anybody else. It's just a question that's worth asking. Do we want to redefine what we think success is in our own lives? That's it. As I say, there's way more in the book. There's more of these. You'll hear me talk about them more and more as we go through. We'll keep coming back to them. We'll throw them in. We'll do the Karate Kid training where they all overlap. You can still get the free chapters of the book if you would like to see them. If you'd like to read them or listen to them, just go to paul7cope.com/free chapters. If you like this stuff, like it on YouTube. If you're watching it on YouTube, share it with one more person. That's all I ask. If you like it, if you share it with one person and they share it with one person, we'll get this to many more people. And that's the whole point of this, is to try and get this information out to as many people as we can. This is all free and it will remain free. I hope you enjoyed that. Take care. See you next time.